The rain had just begun to fall as the evening lights of the city flickered on, glowing softly against the slick streets. At the grand entrance of a luxury hotel nestled in downtown Chicago, Cameron Steele adjusted the cuff of his tailored charcoal suit and gave a brief nod to the doorman. His black sit-in waited at the curb, engine humming low, the driver holding the rear door open. Cameron was used to this. Efficiency, control, precision. Every part of his day was scheduled, every decision calculated. As the CEO of Steele Technologies, one of the most influential tech empires in the world, he was a man of order and progress. But just as he stepped forward to enter his car, something, or rather, someone, shifted in his periphery. He turned his head slightly, his gaze drifting across the street. There, near the crowded bus stop, stood a woman holding two small backpacks and clutching the hands of two boys, both no older than 6. The woman struggled to shield the children from the rain with her coat, her hair already damp and clinging to her cheeks. She bent down to adjust one of the boys' jackets, her movements rushed but careful. There was something about her posture, something familiar in the curve of her shoulders or the way she tucked her hair behind her ear. Cameron narrowed his eyes. For a second, time seemed to stop. The world around him, the blaring horns, the voices of passers-by, the rumble of tires against wet asphalt, faded into a kind of quiet hum. Then the woman looked up. Cameron's breath caught in his throat. It was her. Elena Marsh. The name formed silently in his mind like an echo from a different lifetime. She hadn't changed much. Her features were slightly more mature now, the sparkle in her eyes softer, tempered by time and experience. Her clothes were simple, practical, even, but she wore them with the same grace he remembered. Cameron felt a sudden tightness in his chest. He hadn't seen Elena in nearly 7 years, not since the night she walked away from him, quietly and without warning. But what shocked him more than seeing Elena again was what stood beside her. The two boys. Cameron's eyes locked onto their faces. Both had the same wavy brown hair he had as a child. Their jawlines, still soft with youth, carried the faintest trace of his own. But it was their eyes that paralyzed him. Bright, clear, unmistakable. He saw those eyes every time he looked in the mirror. He wasn't imagining it. He couldn't be. The boys tugged at Elena's hands, one asking about the rain, the other trying to help her with the phone she was struggling to unlock. She looked up again, this time catching Cameron's gaze fully. Their eyes met. She froze. Cameron took a step off the curb, his polished shoes splashing lightly in the shallow puddle forming near the sidewalk. He didn't speak right away. He couldn't. His heart pounded, loud and unrelenting in his ears. Elena. His voice was quiet but carried urgency. She didn't answer. Her lips parted slightly, as if she wanted to speak, but nothing came out. One of the boys turned to her, sensing the tension. "Mom, who's that man?" Cameron flinched. The word hit him like a wave. Mom. Elena glanced down at the child, brushing her fingers through his damp hair. "Just someone I used to know, sweetheart." She was trying to end the moment, to turn away. She tapped her phone again, trying to pull up a ride request, her fingers trembling slightly. Cameron stepped closer, not intruding, but determined. "Elena, are they?" He stopped himself. He couldn't bring himself to say the words yet. She straightened, holding her chin up with quiet strength. "It's been a long time, Cameron." He nodded. 6 years, 7 months. He hadn't intended to keep track, but the math had etched itself into his mind like a scar. Her eyes softened briefly, but only for a second. "A lot has changed." "Clearly," he replied, glancing at the boys again. They were now giggling quietly together, huddled under their shared umbrella. Despite the tension, the innocence in their laughter pulled something in him, something buried and forgotten. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" he asked finally, his voice low, but steady. She looked away. "It wasn't the right time. You were building an empire, Cameron. You were already living in a world I couldn't belong to." He frowned, a quiet storm building behind his eyes. "That wasn't your choice to make. You should have let me in." "I was protecting them," she said, her voice suddenly firmer. "And myself." Things weren't simple back then. A long silence fell between them. Then one of the boys ran toward Cameron, holding up a small toy car that had fallen out of his backpack. "Excuse me, mister," he said politely. "Is this yours?" Cameron knelt instinctively, taking the toy gently. "No, I think that's yours, champ." The boy giggled and nodded. "Thanks." He paused and tilted his head. "You kinda look like me." Cameron's heart nearly stopped. Alina rushed over, touching the boy's shoulder gently. "Come on, sweetie. Let's not bother the nice man." But Cameron couldn't move. He looked at Alina again, his voice barely a whisper. "Please, let me talk to you." She hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Not here. Not now." The Uber pulled up. She opened the door and guided the boys inside. Before getting in herself, she looked back. "I live in Lincoln Park. If you're serious about talking, you'll find a way." Then she was gone. Cameron stood there in the rain long after the car disappeared. His driver waited patiently by the car, not asking questions. For the first time in years, Cameron Steele's mind wasn't occupied by quarterly reports, board meetings, or product launches. Instead, it was haunted by the eyes of two little boys. His sons. The rain had stopped by morning, leaving behind a crisp, damp scent in the air and puddles that reflected the rising sun like scattered mirrors. Cameron sat in his office, the 52nd floor of the SteelTech Tower, a modern fortress of glass and innovation. The skyline stretched endlessly beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, but today it held no charm. His assistant had brought him coffee. 3 meetings were lined up before noon. A venture capitalist was waiting for his approval on a major AI acquisition. Yet Cameron hadn't opened a single file. His mind was still across town in Lincoln Park. He'd spent the night replaying every second of that unexpected encounter. The way Alina's voice trembled slightly, the way she guarded the boys as if her body alone could shield them from the truth, and the way one of them, his son, he was now certain, had looked him straight in the eye and said, "You kinda look like me." It was no coincidence, no trick of the mind. He knew what he saw. He should have been angry, but all he felt was a kind of hollow ache, a dull echo of something long buried under ambition and time. After canceling his afternoon appointments, he finally stepped away from the noise of corporate life. His driver was surprised by the sudden change in schedule, but he didn't question it. Cameron gave a simple destination: Lincoln Park. He didn't have an address. All he had was a vague clue. She told him he'd find a way. And he would. It took nearly 2 hours of driving through the neighborhood, a mixture of old row houses and newly built condos. He scanned every park, every sidewalk. He was about to give up when he noticed a familiar figure on a corner near a local school. Alina. She was holding the hand of one boy while the other skipped slightly ahead, a blue lunchbox swinging from his grip. They were headed home, clearly just back from school. Without thinking, Cameron stepped out of the car. She noticed him instantly, her jaw tightening. She stopped walking and looked down at the boys. "Go ahead and wait for me at the door, okay?" she said gently. They obeyed, running to a red brick townhouse just a few houses down. Cameron approached slowly. "I told you I'd find a way." Alina crossed her arms. "You always did like a challenge." "I didn't come here to argue," he said quietly. "I came for the truth." A long silence passed between them. She studied him for a moment, then gestured toward the small iron fence. "Come inside. They're going to ask questions, and they deserve answers. Just not in the middle of the street." The townhouse was modest but warm. Pictures lined the hallway walls, framed drawings, handprints in paint, tiny crafts that could only have been made in kindergarten classrooms. It hit him then with full force. He had missed everything. Their first steps, their first words, their birthdays. He didn't even know their names. Elena invited him to sit at the small dining table. The boys were in the next room, now distracted by cartoons. She offered him tea, but he declined. "They're yours, Cameron," she said finally, her voice steady. "Their names are Noah and Eli. They're 6. He closed his eyes for a moment. "Why didn't you tell me? Even once?" "I didn't know how," she said. "You were launching Steel Tech. You were working 16-hour days. We were already falling apart, and I didn't want to be the woman who brought a child into the world just to tie you down. I didn't think you'd want them." "You didn't even ask," he said, not harshly, but with pain threaded through every syllable. "You decided that for me." "I decided what I thought would protect them," she replied, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "I didn't know if you'd even believe me. I didn't want them to grow up wondering why their father resented them." Cameron's throat tightened. "I would never have resented them. I would have loved them from the second I knew." She looked at him, surprised by the conviction in his voice. "You think all I care about is business," he continued. "But I wanted a family. I wanted that with you. I just didn't know how to make room for both." The room grew still. The television in the other room played quietly, laughter from a cartoon drifting through the doorway. "They ask about you sometimes," Elena admitted. "They don't know who you are, just that there's someone out there they've never met." I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. He looked toward the living room, where the boys were now sprawled on a rug, drawing in notebooks. They looked so full of life, so bright. "I want to get to know them," Cameron said. "If you'll let me." She hesitated. "It won't be easy. They're used to a certain rhythm. I don't want them hurt." "I don't want that either," he said. "But they deserve to know the truth. And I deserve a chance to be their father, even if I have to earn it from the ground up." Elena sighed. "Start slow. Don't overwhelm them. We'll take it one step at a time." Cameron nodded, gratitude washing over him. "Thank you." Just then, one of the boys peeked into the room. "Mom, can Mr. Cameron play Legos with us?" Elena looked at Cameron, a small smile tugging at her lips. "What do you think?" He stood up slowly, eyes glistening. "I think that's the best offer I've had all year." And for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like a CEO. He felt like a man finally being given a chance to reclaim what truly mattered. The light through the windows grew softer as the sun began to dip behind the rooftops of Lincoln Park, casting golden streaks across the hardwood floor of Elena's small living room. Cameron sat cross-legged on the carpet, awkwardly trying to attach a Lego roof to the crooked house Eli had built, while Noah focused intently on crafting what he claimed was a super spaceship. It had been years since Cameron had done anything like this, years since he'd sat on a floor, completely unbothered by time or deadlines. The boys talked and laughed freely, unaware of the deep significance of the moment. They were simply being kids. To them, Cameron was still just a stranger with a suit jacket hanging on a chair, sleeves rolled up, trying to make sense of a plastic toy. But every time he looked at them, really looked at them, it stirred something inside him. It wasn't just about resemblance anymore. It was the way Noah squinted when he concentrated, the way Eli's left eyebrow twitched when he was excited. Small habits Cameron recognized without needing to be told. He had lost 6 entire years. He would never get those back. But maybe, just maybe, he could still be part of the years ahead. Elena stepped in with warm mugs of cocoa, smiling quietly as she observed the three of them. She hadn't said much since their conversation at the table. There was something unreadable in her expression, a mix of hesitation and quiet hope. Noah reached for the cocoa with both hands. "Thanks, Mom." "Mr. Cameron, do you want marshmallows?" He smiled. "Only if they're the big kind." Elena chuckled softly, breaking some of the tension. "We're a mini marshmallow household, I'm afraid." Cameron looked at her, his voice low but playful. "I guess I'll have to adjust." It was a small thing, but something in that moment shifted. As the boys became engrossed again in their toys, Elena sat on the edge of the couch. "They like you," she said after a pause. "Faster than I expected." Cameron kept his eyes on the Legos. "They're incredible. You've done an amazing job." Her face tightened slightly. "It hasn't been easy. I never wanted to raise them alone. But I did what I had to do." "I know," he replied. "And I'm not here to undo any of that. I just want to be part of it now, however I can." She looked down at her hands. "They'll have questions about why you weren't there." "I'll answer them," he said, honestly, in a way they can understand. After a moment, she nodded slowly. "All right, but it's going to be a process, not a weekend visit kind of thing. I wouldn't want it any other way." Later that evening, as the boys washed up for bed, Cameron stood in the small kitchen with Alina. She was rinsing dishes, and he was drying them with a towel that had cartoon whales printed on it. "How long are you in town?" she asked. He hesitated. "I was only supposed to be here for a few days. Meetings, investors, you know the drill. But now." He met her eyes. "Now I'm staying. I'll keep the meetings virtual. Shift things around. I can do that. They come first now." Alina seemed surprised, but she didn't challenge it. "You're serious about this?" "I've never been more serious about anything." Just then, Noah called from the hallway. "Mom, Mr. Cameron, can you read us a bedtime story?" Cameron glanced toward the hallway, then back at Alina. "You can," she said quietly. "Go ahead." He stepped into the boys' room, the walls covered in space-themed posters and glowing star stickers. Both boys were tucked in, eyes wide with excitement. Eli handed him a book. "This one's our favorite." Cameron took it, noticing the worn cover and taped edges. "Looks like it's been through some adventures." "It has." Noah grinned. "Just like us." As he began to read, something inside him softened completely. His voice was steady, his pace gentle. The boys listened closely, snuggling under their blankets, their gazes fixed on the pages. By the time the story ended, both were nearly asleep. Cameron gently closed the book, his heart full in a way he hadn't expected. Back in the living room, he found Alina tidying up toys. She didn't look up as he entered. "They're already asking if you can come back tomorrow." "I was hoping you'd say yes," he replied. She finally looked at him. "We'll see. Just be patient. They've lived a full life without you. It's going to take time. I'll give it all the time it needs." As Cameron stepped outside and felt the cool night air brush against his skin, he realized something profound. His entire life had changed in less than 24 hours. The man who had once believed legacy was measured in market shares and digital innovation now knew the truth. The real legacy was what you left in the hearts of others. He looked back at the small townhouse, its windows now dimmed for the night, and made himself a silent promise. He wasn't going to be just a visitor in their lives. He was going to be their father. Over the next few weeks, the rhythm of Cameron's life began to shift in ways he had never imagined. The skyscrapers, the executive meetings, and the whirlwind of business began to take a backseat to afternoon park visits, storybook readings, and chaotic, joyful dinners, filled with laughter and spilled juice. He found himself waking up earlier, not for emails or stock reports, but to send a good morning text to Alina and ask what the boys needed for school. Some days, he'd stop by just to walk them there, two small hands in his, navigating the cracked sidewalks of their neighborhood. Other days, he'd meet them afterward, helping with science projects or joining soccer games at the park, where he quickly learned that Eli played with fearless energy and Noah had the calm focus of a future strategist. For Cameron, it wasn't just about showing up. It was about becoming someone they could rely on. Every moment mattered now. Every drawing taped to the fridge. Every question they asked. Every time they called him Mr. Cameron. And every time they started slipping into something else. More familiar, more hopeful, like Dad. Alina watched it unfold with cautious eyes. She wasn't quick to hand over trust. Not because she wanted to punish Cameron, but because life had taught her the weight of promises. Raising two boys alone had left no room for wishful thinking. She had learned to survive with resilience and to protect her children from the heartbreak of things that didn't last. One Saturday afternoon, after a visit to the planetarium where the boys ran wild with excitement, they all returned to Elena's townhouse, carrying handmade solar system mobiles and paper star charts. Cameron offered to help make dinner while the kids were upstairs. In the kitchen, he rolled up his sleeves and chopped vegetables beside her. "You know," she said, glancing at him over her shoulder, "if someone had told me a month ago that I'd have you standing in my kitchen trying to cook pasta, I'd have laughed." He smiled. "If someone told me I'd rather be here than in a boardroom closing a 9-figure deal, I'd have laughed too. You really have changed." Cameron paused, setting down the knife. "I had to. Meeting them changed everything. But so did seeing you again. I didn't realize how empty my world had gotten until you came back into it." Elena didn't respond right away. She wiped her hands on a towel, then leaned against the counter. "I want to believe you. I really do. And I see how the boys light up when you walk in the room. But I need to know, are you here because of guilt or because of love?" He met her gaze without hesitation. "Because of love. Guilt wouldn't have lasted past the first diaper I helped change, or the first night Eli woke up crying from a nightmare and wouldn't go back to sleep unless I stayed. Love is what makes me cancel meetings to attend their school plays. Love is what makes me stand here beside you, wanting to earn back what I lost." She didn't speak for a long moment, and then she nodded slowly. "All right, then let's keep building this. But no more vanishing. No more grand speeches unless you mean every word." "I mean everyone," he said softly. Later that evening, after the kids were asleep, Cameron found himself sitting on the front steps with Elena, the cool spring night wrapping around them. A gentle breeze stirred the trees lining the quiet street. "I never asked," he said, breaking the silence. "What happened after you left?" "After us?" Elena pulled her sweater tighter around her shoulders. "After we broke up, I went to stay with my sister for a while. I found out I was pregnant a month later. I wanted to tell you, but I was scared. Scared I'd end up raising them in your shadow, constantly wondering if you'd come or go. So I built a life. Not a perfect one, but a real one. I worked as a teacher's aide, picked up weekend shifts at a bookstore, and gave them everything I could." Cameron listened closely, his chest tightening with the realization of all she had endured alone. "I used to wonder what kind of father you would have been," she said, her voice quieter now. "And I worried I made the wrong choice by not giving you a chance. But seeing you with them, I think I might have been wrong." He reached out, gently covering her hand with his. "It's not about what we missed. It's about what we still have time to do." For a moment, she let herself lean into the comfort of that thought. 2 days later, an unexpected letter arrived at Elena's door. It was official, embossed with a gold seal from the court. Cameron had quietly filed for shared custody, not out of defiance, but as a symbol of his commitment. Alongside it was a letter he had written by hand. "Elena, this isn't a fight. This is a promise. I will never try to take them away from you, because I know you are their heart. I just want to be there, to share their lives, their triumphs, their setbacks. I want to co-parent in every sense of the word, to stand beside you, not ahead of you. Whatever you decide, I will respect it. But I needed you to know that this isn't temporary. I'm all in. Cameron." Elena read it twice, tears welling in her eyes, not from sadness, but from relief. The kind of relief that comes when you realize you might not have to carry the weight of the world alone anymore. She called him that night. "They have a school project due next week," she said. "They have to build a rocket. Think you can handle that?" He laughed softly. "I'll bring the blueprints." The next chapter of their story wasn't going to be perfect, but for the first time, it was going to be written together. A cold wind swept through the streets as the last of autumn's leaves tumbled across the sidewalk, painting the neighborhood in shades of orange and brown. Inside the townhouse, The scent of cinnamon and fresh cookies filled the air. Cameron stood at the kitchen island, sleeves rolled up, helping Noah and Eli decorate a tray of cookies shaped like stars and rockets for their upcoming school science fair. "Too many sprinkles," Noah shouted as Eli dumped half a container onto one cookie. "There's no such thing as too many," Eli argued, grinning up at Cameron. Cameron laughed, catching a sprinkle before it bounced off the counter. "We're making edible constellations, not sugar mountains." The boys burst into giggles, and even Alina, who was organizing the boys' science materials on the dining table, couldn't help but smile. This life, this noise, this mess, this warmth was becoming the new normal for Cameron. But behind the smiles and bedtime stories, a storm was brewing, one that neither he nor Alina could have predicted. It started with a single article. An online gossip column, known more for stirring scandal than reporting facts, published a piece titled, "Tech Giant's Secret Family." Rumors surround billionaire CEO and ex-girlfriend. It had photos, blurry but real. Cameron at the park with the boys, walking alongside Alina, holding school projects, smiling like any other family. He saw it first while riding the elevator to a board meeting. The moment he stepped out, his phone was already buzzing with messages from his assistant, his PR team, and even a few board members. By the time he arrived at the townhouse that evening, Alina was standing on the porch, holding the phone in her hand, her face pale. "You didn't tell anyone?" she asked quietly. "I swear I didn't," he said. "I've kept everything private. I don't know how this got out." She took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing thoughts. It doesn't matter how. It matters that it's everywhere now. That night, they sat at the kitchen table long after the boys had gone to sleep, papers and devices spread out in front of them, the silence between them heavy. "This is going to change everything," Alina said. "The media, the attention. We've worked so hard to give the boys a normal life." "I know," Cameron replied. "And I promise you, I will protect them, whatever it takes." "But they're already starting," she whispered, scrolling through a comment section filled with speculation and cruel assumptions. "They're saying things about me, about the boys, like there's some secret scandal." Cameron reached across the table and gently closed her laptop. "Don't read those. None of that matters. What matters is what we know is true." She looked up at him, tears brimming in her eyes. "I can't let them be used like pawns, Cameron. I won't let their lives become entertainment." "You don't have to," he said firmly. "Let me handle it." The following morning, Cameron called a press conference, not the kind with flashing lights and grand announcements, but a quiet, carefully planned one with a few key journalists, all briefed with strict guidelines. He stood in front of them. No suit, no scripted lines, just a father speaking the truth. "There's been a lot of talk lately," he began. "So let me be clear. The two boys in those photos are my sons. Their mother is someone I care deeply about, someone who raised them with grace and strength, alone, while I was unaware of their existence. I'm not ashamed of them. I'm proud of them. And while our story didn't start the way most families do, I'm committed to being there for them, now and forever." He didn't take questions. He didn't need to. The message was clear. Back at home, Alina watched the live stream with the boys sitting beside her. When Cameron walked through the door later that evening, he found them all waiting in the living room. Eli ran up to him first. "Mom said you told everyone we're your kids." "I did," Cameron said, kneeling down, "because I'm proud that you are." Noah stood beside his mother, quieter but smiling. "Does that mean we're really a family now?" Cameron looked at Alina, who met his gaze and gave a slow, almost imperceptible nod. "Yes," Cameron said, "we've always been. We just didn't know it yet." That weekend, they took a trip out of the city, not to escape the media, but to reconnect. They rented a cabin by the lake. No Wi-Fi, no reporters, just trees, water, and sky. They hiked trails, roasted marshmallows, and sat around the fire telling stories. It wasn't luxurious, but it was perfect. One evening, as the sun set in streaks of orange over the lake, Cameron stood beside Elena on the dock, watching the boys skip stones. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice low, "about what comes next." She glanced at him, curious. "What do you mean?" "I want to make this official. Not just co-parenting. I want to be legally recognized as their father. I want them to know that I'm here, no matter what." She didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached out and gently took his hand. "I think they already know that," she said. "But yes, let's do it, together." In that quiet moment, surrounded by the sounds of the water and the distant laughter of their boys, something settled between them. Not just forgiveness, not just trust, but a new beginning. Cameron had built an empire with strategy, power, and relentless ambition, but the foundation of this new life, this unexpected family, was built on something even stronger: love, commitment, and the courage to start again. Winter blanketed the city in a hush of white. Snowflakes danced in the air like soft whispers, covering rooftops, sidewalks, and bare trees. Streetlights glowed against the frosty dusk, casting a warm shimmer across the neighborhood where Cameron now spent most of his evenings. The townhouse, once quiet and solitary, had transformed into a home brimming with warmth, laughter, and stories tucked into every corner. Inside, the fireplace crackled softly, the living room dimly lit by the glow of the fire and the twinkle of holiday lights strung across the windows. The scent of pine, gingerbread, and fresh cocoa filled the air. Cameron sat on the floor beside a half-decorated tree, holding a delicate ornament painted by the boys. Two stick figures, one labeled me and the other Dad.